I'm Rabbi Chaim Seidlerfeller, and I serve as the interim chair of Americans for Confederation in Israel and Palestine. Ron Skolnick is our coordinator and director, and we thank all of our numerous co-sponsors. We are united in our efforts. A couple of years ago, a number of us came together to establish an American support group for Eretz L'Chulam, as Avi correctly pronounces it, in an effort at publicizing the little known at the time Confederation option so as to promote a constructive vision for peace that was and is being pursued by a grassroots partnership of Israelis and Palestinians. I want to stress the significance of the partnership dimension. This is the first joint Jewish-Palestinian political effort whose goal is to promote peace. It provides us with a constructive vision for the future of Israel-Palestine that endorses the sovereign national interests of both Jews and Palestinians and is grounded in the values of equality, dignity, coexistence, and justice. For more details, you can consult the website of A Land for All, Eretz L'Chulam Alpha, and consider a contribution as indicated on the Alpha page through the New Israel Fund. As to today's webinar, years ago, Gershom Scholem penned a seminal essay entitled Redemption Through Sin. In it, he describes the need for the Messianic Redeemer to sink to the depths of depravity in order to redeem the sparks of holiness that inhere in all of creation. In later Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov taught Hara Kisei Latov. Evil is a throne of good. This is one of those crisis moments when we feel that we have sunk to the depths of depravity and when we are consequently primed to rebound by exploiting the circumstances to start building the peace anew. The old paradigm has been shattered, and we have been granted the opportunity for a renewal of the quest for peace. As indicated by the numbers participating, we seem to be hungry for a new initiative. Leading the effort as a CEO of Eretz L'Chulam and the moderator of today's conversation, who will introduce our speakers, is May Pundak. May, as many of you know, is a feminist lawyer, activist, and social entrepreneur. She was a director of the Polyphony Foundation, co-founder an educational dialogue program for Jewish and Palestinian teenagers in West and East Jerusalem, worked for the New Israel Fund, leading campaigns for social change and building a community based on renewed leadership. She graduated from Harvard University's Leadership Community Organization and Activism course and completed a bachelor's and master's degree in public and international law with an emphasis on human rights from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And of course, we know that she is Ron Pundak's daughter and a star in her own right. May will moderate our discussion today. May, please.
Toda, Chaim. And thank you everyone for being with us this evening. We're moving throughout the day between being emotional and broken and hurt, and between choosing life, really just choosing life and choosing to continue to struggle for a future here. And I want to start by thanking you all for joining us this evening. We don't have a choice but to do what we're doing. At least I think that that's how we feel. But having more than 1,500 people being interested in this evening really gives us a very strong feeling that we are not alone. And so I want to welcome everyone and to thank everyone for being here with us this evening. I also want to thank everyone who helped this evening to happen, Chaim and Ron Skolnick and Adi Berkovich from A Land for All, and of course our speakers. I'll say a few words about how this evening or how this lunch will be conducted, and then I'll say just a few opening remarks and let our speakers, Avi Dabush and Ameer Fakhoury, share their thoughts. First of all, just to say that we have more than 400 people on the call right now and many more on the Facebook page, and the numbers continue to rise. So that's by itself good news for people who are choosing, to be with us today. I also want to say that if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A box. We have a very short time together, but we will try to address at least some of the questions. So please write them in the Q&A section. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We don't have any translation, so that's good. Okay, so my name is May Pundak. I am the executive director of the Israeli branch of Land for All, also known as Two States, One Homeland. And I'll start with just saying a few words for those of you who don't know so much about what Land for All is. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about today. Land for All is an Israeli-Palestinian organization advocating for a shared vision for an alternative, updated, relevant, and realistic two-state solution. We have a few principles that we follow that I think are worth sharing today. We're a vision of two states. We understand that there are two people who live between the river and the sea, two people who deserve full equality, personal and collective, dignity, the right for self-determination, freedom, and safety and security. Our second principle is one homeland. One of the things that we think that have been ignored for too long is the sentiment of Israelis and Palestinians to the homeland. This is not yet a normative discussion. This is just describing reality. Most Israelis and Palestinians have a very profound and deep sentiment to the entirety of the homeland. And the sooner we start recognizing that, we believe the sooner we will be able to come up with viable and sustainable and relevant solutions. If we just start from paradigms of only human rights and international law and don't take into consideration what reality speaks so strongly, we might fail again. And so it's very important for us to start from where we are at. Continuing talking about this shared homeland, there are a few things worth mentioning. One is maybe the heart, and Chaim mentioned it so beautifully, of A Land for All, which is the paradigm of sharing instead of the paradigm of separation. Separation today in Israel-Palestine has become not feasible. We believe it's also not desirable. And so when we discuss a viable, relevant solution, we want to be realistic about it and see what has changed in the past 30 years. How can we learn from the mistakes made, from the deadlocks that have been unable to be solved until now? And what the people are talking about. And so just a few examples about this reality. If we think about the environment, if we think about natural resources, if we think about our economies, and if we think about Jerusalem, and I dare say, even if we think about security, even today, we know that separation doesn't work. We also know that we are codependent, we are interdependent. We cannot solve climate change alone. We cannot, with $1 billion wall, even protect ourselves and make sure that we have security. However, in the past 20 years, what has enabled security for Israeli Jews has been very tight collaboration with Palestinians. I want to take it a step forward. In the place where we see the most separation and the most hideous separation, which is Gaza, we see the events of October 7th, whereas what we see within Israel of 2 million Palestinian citizens living within Israel is the place where we see a sense of stability and somewhat of a safety, again, for Israeli Jews much more, and we will discuss this in a moment. But what we start with is really this understanding that separation is pretty impossible. And what we think about the fact that it's undesirable, well, we begin with our shared interests. We begin with the understanding that if we don't articulate the problem together, if we don't identify the reading of the reality jointly, Israelis and Palestinians, we won't be able to understand where the problems lie. And therefore, when we articulate where the solution should be and how to come up with the right solutions that will be acceptable, that will be viable, that will be realistic, we have to think about them together. And so what we are doing for the past 10 years is really trying to not negotiate so much, but actually sit together and co-create something that we know that can work. I want to say a few words about where we are today. I think that there's a lot of things to say about what started on October 7th and what's been going on since then in Gaza, in the West Bank, and within the Palestinian society and community in Israel. There is so much fear and trauma on both sides, and the war is ongoing. There's a ceasefire now, thank goodness, but just this morning, we had an awful terror attack in Jerusalem. The displacement of Palestinian communities and violence in the West Bank is growing every day. And the democratic space in Israel for Palestinian citizens, but also for us peace seekers in Israel is shrinking daily. And so I want to say that the war needs to end, but it needs to end in a strategically, thoughtfully way. It won't end by itself. One of the things that I think that we've learned on October 7th is that there is no military solution to this problem. And there will not be any military solution to this problem. Another thing that we have learned, hopefully, is that there is no shrinking the conflict. There is no managing the conflict. There's no normalizing the conflict. The problem that we face today, there are many problems, but the problem that we face today is not Hamas. The problem that we face today is not the events of what happened on October 7th, and it's even not the awful tragedy of what's happening in Gaza today. The problem is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And once we identify the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as our problem, as our main problem, then we can start maybe moving from despair into somewhat of hope. And when I say hope, is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can be solved. It's difficult to imagine now, and we are here to provide you maybe with some political imagination. But we are here to tell you that conflicts can be solved. We've seen it around the world with much bloodier conflicts like Europe. You wouldn't imagine 80 years ago that Germans would be able to cross the border to France without even knowing where the border is. We see it in Northern Ireland. We even see it in Israel, in the Israeli context of the War of 73 and the peace agreement with Egypt in 79 that has led us, at least for Israelis, to have much more safety and security, and for Egyptians as well. So we want to start with the fact that the conflict can end, and our responsibility is to come up right now in this very dark moment to catch the opportunity, to seize the opportunity, and to make sure that we are not only committed that this will be the last war between Israel and Palestine, and that we don't go back to any fake status quo or any cycles of violence, because we will not be able to attain this kind of cycles. We need to be committed to a viable solution that is based on the interest of both people, that is based on the paradigm that no one is going anywhere, that is based on the commitment to values that unfortunately the classic two-state has perhaps forgotten about, which is equality, collective and individual equality for everyone who lives here, and safety and security and the right for self-determination and dignity in this homeland. And so what we are talking about today is the tension and the connection between despair and between hope. I just want to say a few words about hope, and then give Avi and Ameer a chance to share. A Land for All has been around for more than 10 years at this point. What keeps us together are our shared values and our shared future, but what really keeps us together, I think, in a very strong way, is the fact that we know that we're not going anywhere, and the fact that we know that if we have our interest represented in a solution, it can actually work this time. And so we have moved recently into a structure of a shared board, 7 Palestinians and 7 Israelis. It's been a long process of getting us to this point, but our first board meeting was supposed to be this Tuesday. However, October 7th happened. And what happened right after that is that on October 10th, 7 Palestinians and 7 Israelis joined our first joint board meeting. And we have been meeting every week since, doing the work together. And not because we love each other and not because, you know, we have nothing else to do, but because we know that we are choosing life. And if we choose life, we have to do it together. That's what we know at this point. And I want to just share that miracle, but it's not a miracle. It's really a group of people, of hundreds and thousands of people in Israel-Palestine who know that the shared future is the only future that we have in this region. So thank you very, very much for being here with us. And thank you so much for everyone who's watching us also on Facebook, and for the 500 people who are here on this call. And I would like to start with Avi Dabush, who is one of the founders of A Land for All. Avi? Yeah. It's really good to be here with you.
Thank you, May. It was very exciting, but I would like to say also that for me, after 2 months, almost 2 months, it's kind of an exhausting and even heartbreaking times. I will say a few words maybe about the pain and how is it to be broken. You know, Chaim said something from the Baal Shem Tov, really interesting, Raki Selatov. So I will go to another rabbi, Leonard Cohen, that talked about the cracks in order to bring the light. So I will just say that I was born and raised in Ashkelon. It's something like 8 or 9 kilometers from Gaza. I was born in 1976, and Gaza was our big city. Ashkelon was different and Gaza was different, and it was before the first Intifada, and I was a lot inside of Gaza as a child. Of course, then we didn't want to or didn't realize that there are Palestinians and they want to have their freedom, and there is an occupation. So it was another era, but Gaza is part of me. With a lot of love and now much harder emotions. So I grew up in Ashkelon in a right-wing family, with a family that came from Syria and Libya. And as May mentioned, when I sat for the first time with Meron Rapoport, and I thought that it is another talk with some kind of left-wing activist or leader from Tel Aviv, and he will say the same things that I used to hear. And then I heard about the emotions, as May said, and I remember, and I of course knew that my families came because of Jerusalem and Hebron and Nablus and other places. And I also knew that before Ashkelon, there was a very big Palestinian village, Majdal. And I know that people are still longing for Nablus and still longing for Majdal. And this is really important to understand. 48 and of course before. In the last 15 years, I live around Gaza. It started with Bro Chayil, it's a kibbutz near Sderot. And then in 2014, in Protective Edge, I led the establishment of the movement for the future of the Western Negev. And we shouted that there is a need for a diplomatic solution. And again, you can understand that we failed. And after that, I moved to Sderot. And for almost 6 years, I lived in Sderot. And in the last year, I live in Kibbutz Nirim. It's a kibbutz very near to Khan Yunis, something like a kilometer or a kilometer and a half. And in October 7th, I was in Nirim, and I was in my house with my wife and her children. And of course, the kibbutz was attacked. And I won't go to the details because, you know, you heard so many stories. But it was so awful, and in many ways, it still didn't end this awful day. And we are still this week, you know, just on Tuesday, we had 2 kidnaps from Nirim that came back to Israel from Gaza. And right now we are dealing still with funerals of soldiers that died in Nirim in that day, because they protected the Nirim, so it didn't close, and maybe we won't be closing this day for many weeks, months, and maybe years. So this is the pain, but I do have a lot of hope, and this is one of the things that really sometimes surprising and really exciting about Land for All, Eretz Lechulam. Because again, as Chaim said, Ara Kiseh Latov, from those places we are changing from this evil, from this, in a way, ultimate evil. And I feel that people are asking me all the time, how do you feel right now? What do you think? What changed? Because it's really had to change us. It's such a huge thing that happened to us, a very bad thing. And I feel like my roadmap changed, but my values and my destination didn't change. And this is really important more than ever, our values. And I don't think it's naive, because, you know, just as I am going to my Jewish history, our Jewish history, I can see people like Viktor Frankl and others that talked about it, that in order to win, you need your values. And we just have the portion of the week of Jacob with the angel. And this is really interesting. A knight and Jacob is fighting this angel. And of course, a lot of people are saying that it's something from within Jacob. And nobody wins, because on wars, of course, nobody wins. But the way that Jacob winning is that he get a mission. He became from Jacob to Israel. He have a mission. And this time we have to be very clear about our values and mission. And Land for All, for me, it's a way to build another coalition, not a coalition of Jews against Arabs or the opposite around, not a coalition of Zionists against Palestinians or the opposite around, but a coalition of Jews and Arabs, Zionists and Palestinians that are fighting for peace, that are fighting for justice and equality, and can see all the people from Nirim, from Khan Yunis, and from all the area that I really feel that this is my place, the Middle East, as one, as equal human beings. So thank you.
Wow, Avi, you even you even have time to spare, so thank you for that. Just before I'll introduce Ameer, I want to say that for me, one of the things that have brought me to A Land for All was really moving. I just want to say that one of the things that brought me to A Land for All was the fact that the paradigm of sharing, it goes towards the reality. It goes towards, of what the reality speaks. It speaks about partnership. It speaks about sharing this homeland. it goes towards the future, understanding that our future is shared here, but it also creates a political home that is not exclusive. It begins with the fact that people see this place as their home. And once we start with respecting that sense of connection, and I think, A Land for All is able to talk about decolonization and about equality, but it also is able to talk about this is the homeland of the Jewish people. And those two for us are not mutually exclusive. We actually have to live with that together, and we have to create a future vision that is based on both of those assumptions. And within that, I think that our community and our leadership represents that. And for me, Avi, you being able to articulate both your personal history and your politics in your way that you read this reality, that it can at the same time is, I think, one of the beating hearts and the real soul, and what makes this organization so unique, but also so resilient. So I want to thank you for that. We will now hear from our dear friend and also Land for All leadership member, Dr. Ameer Fakhoury. Ameer, we're all ears. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Avi and May. It's always in this dark October and November, we have witnessed the deadliest day in this, again, 100-year war, and the deadliest month. Sadly, tragically, we Palestinians and Israelis managed to get to this very tragic point of more than 20,000 people killed in this shared homeland in less than 60 days. Where do we go from here? Some people in this homeland want to use this tragedy to convince us that war is eternal, that Jews and Palestinians in their shared homeland, their only homeland, is doomed to carry on this war for another 100 years. Others, such my dear friends, my partners, May and Avi, and luckily a lot of them, there may be not a majority, but they're sure a robust minority with a deep faith and motivation, knows that there is no other way than convincing most Palestinians and most Israelis between the river and the sea that they have no future other than a future of reconciling with the co-nation living beside them. We have to convince them what they know but refuse to admit, that there's no future for us here in the most existential sense if we do not acknowledge that there is a neighboring nation, a co-nation, that has no other homeland than our own homeland, that this is a shared homeland. So, whereas we know that we cannot control reality, we know that there are moves which are bigger than us. But we know one thing for sure, that to achieve peace, historic reconciliation, to end this 100 years of war, 100 years of war, we have to offer a vision. We have to offer a political solution. We have to offer a story to these two nations. We have to offer an alternative story to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict that has become, in the last 2 months, the deadliest conflict in the 21st century. And we want you to know, as part of the peace reconciliation community in the United States, that there is a highly motivated community here that are not willing to give up to despair, that see the opportunity in this, even in the darkest of hours, simply because we truly don't have any other option. It's not a romantic conclusion. It's an existential one. But we also need your help, because even if we are highly motivated, we need, of course, now your push, your help from abroad, mainly in working in the internal American politics, to push this small but highly motivated group to become the majority, to convince the majority. We want you to work with us to fight those that want to convince us that our future will be nothing but war. And now, sadly, there are too many people in the mainstream media, among the two nations, that are really trying to convince their peoples that we're doomed. And we're optimistic because we see that there is a robust shared society within the Israeli citizenship, comprised from Palestinians and Israeli Jews, that to a large extent function as a glimpse of the future that we want. It's like hearing May, Avi, and all of the wonderful people in 2 states, 1 homeland, that did not change at all after this dreadful times. They become even more motivated. It's like leaping into the future, into the only possible sustainable moral future. Any other option, the only other option, just open the news. This is the other option. It's either our option, a deep peace, not a technical one, based upon an alternative story, based upon a rooted love for the co-nation, based upon acknowledging the other nation as a legitimate sons and daughters of the homeland, not upon technical peace, not upon peace which is nothing but a manifestation of a balance of power. We want a new philosophy for Palestine and Israel. And we know from other conflicts that the real transformation comes mainly, not exclusively, but mainly from adopting a new story for the nation, for the homeland, for the nations of the homeland, for the sons and daughters of the homeland. You may call it Ubuntu, you may call it parity of esteem. We need our story, and we have a story. We have a robust one that keeps us together even in this darkest time. We will discuss technicalities afterward, and we're not we're not oblivious to the importance of these technicalities. But I think that first and foremost, we need this robust story, and we need your help to disseminate and convince that this is the only way. And I think that my time is...
תודה, אמיר, שוקרן. So, I want to, maybe what I'll do is just share a few questions, and I will let Avi and Ameer and I will give some beginning or of ideas and answers. Is that okay with you guys? So a few questions that we've had. A big question is from the crowd of more than 500 people at this point. What can we do? What can we do? Question number 2 is, what are the principles, guiding principles of Land for All as you see it today? And maybe another question that I'm seeing is, what is the meaning of 2 states, 1 homeland? What does that mean for you? So Avi, maybe you start just in 5 minutes or even less, 3 minutes. And then we'll give a chance for Ameer, and I'll add some thoughts about what's going on today at the Land.
I'll try to do it quickly. What can we do? I think in a way we answered that question. We need to support those values. We need to support those voices, and there are voices like that, of course, in Land for All and in other places. The voices that really insist on that, and not only as a moral idea. This is a moral idea, for me, universal and Jewish, but also as a practical idea that we need to learn to live together. Actually, we knew how to live together for many years. Even it wasn't perfect. I don't want to say that for my family in Syria and Libya it was perfect, but it was, for in the Jewish angle, much easier and better, of course, than in other places on the universe. But we need to learn it again, and we need to learn it right now. Right now, we are in a point that we need to understand our equality. The Land for All idea, and I'm going to another question, is to say that this is a homeland, a shared homeland for the sea to the river. And this is a very, very strong and deep idea for me. Because it says, Rabbi Menachem Fuhrman said all the time that it's not that the land is belonging to us, and then we are fighting for this land. Whose land is it? But we are belonging to the land. And this goes to the very emotional tie of the Jewish people here to this land. And this is really important for me, that my Palestinian friends saying, I'm with you in that, I understand that. And also the deep Palestinian tie to this land. And I'm, as an Israeli and Zionist, a Jew, saying, I understand that and I support that. And if we support those two, and we can say it can coexist, and we can say there is a way, there is a plan that it can coexist, and we want you to be part of it. Of course, we need to think about it. We need to push it in the political sphere. We need to push it in the civil society sphere, and so on. If we are doing that, we are getting closer and closer to the solution. Not, as May said, not managing the conflict as for many years, of course, Netanyahu is a symbol, but it's not only Netanyahu push this idea and philosophy, but to solve the conflict and to live together, to live good life on this shared land.
Toda, Avi. Ameer?
Well, there is a lot that we can do. For example, we meet diplomats, we meet ordinary people in every walks of life, we meet organizations that are centered on shared work between Israelis and Palestinians. There's a lot of islands of partnership in Israel. We have to make them a continent. They're highly motivated with the deep impressive philosophy, but they're small. They need help. They need us to push them to the mainstream, to make them a continent. So there's already these islands. We have to bring them together, give them a more robust philosophy, language, land, and support their activities so they will not remain on the margins, but go further and further to the mainstream. And given a special importance to Palestinians within the Israeli citizenship, they have the potential to mediate this possible future. They're already heavily involved in this kind of partnership. They're already very much progressed in developing the language that we need to the alternative future that we seek. So I think that they invest in their potential role in saving, this is the word, in saving these two nations from deteriorating further to even a darker future. So the options are there. They're small. Let's make them bigger, more robust, and let's support them in every way possible. And of course, the philosophy, the best philosophy that we believe in is two nations, one homeland, in its philosophical aspect, and of course in its technical aspects at the same level. So the organizations are there, the philosophy are there, bring them together, support them as much as possible, and make it and make sure and that it will be on the always be on the agenda of the U.S. external politics, and that they will not be reminded of us only when we get to a tragedy. This is the moment, the historical moment to seize the opportunity.
Toda, Ameer. So I will try to maybe answer some of the more technical questions of what are we offering? You know, what is a land for all and what are we doing right now? And I'll try to do it very fast. And maybe this is a good reason to have another call that explains more in details the vision that we've been working on for 10 years. I will say that a land for all was actually born from a crisis, right? It was born from around 10 or 12 years ago when Israelis and Palestinians have realized that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has become non-relevant for most Israelis and for the international community. It was born in a situation where people have been talking about a two-state solution for a long time, but it's become an empty shell, where for Palestinians, what they hear is apartheid and oppression by the PA joined together. And for Israelis, it's become this normal reality where we actually don't really have to even end the occupation or move away from the apartheid reality into solving this conflict. And within that moment of crisis, and if you remember, 12 years ago, the social movement of social demonstrations of 2011, and every political iteration since then has actually neglected completely the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has led to no hope, no vision, no future for us to live here really in safety and in dignity. That is what has led to the creation of a land for all, a feeling that the deadlocks of the two-state solution have been kind of like saying, okay, there's nothing we can do. And this perception of binary, of people saying, oh, the two-state, well, that's, irrelevant or dead. The one state, well, that's irrelevant and won't happen anytime soon. So, we'll just like settle for the good old status quo, which of course benefits Israelis in the very short term, as we know today, and of course Palestinians living under oppression and occupation. And so that was the inception of A Land for All, of Israelis and Palestinians coming together and saying, okay, we have to come up with something new. We have to come up with something that will provide us a political imagination that breaks out of this binary and allows us to recommit to our values of equality and dignity, to recommit to the fact that like we're here, we're stuck here together, you know, we might as well solve it, and to recommit to being very realistic and very pragmatic and not continuing holding on to something that has been crumbling between our fingers. And, you know, most of us have started from the classic two-state solution. I know I did, you know, but at a certain point, I felt that I was banging my head against the wall because I've been talking about it and it hasn't, you know, it's become less and less realistic. And so our commitment is to update that version. And what we offer is what we call sometimes a two-state solution 2.0 in a way, but it's also a very, very radical change from the two-state solution because it doesn't start from the paradigm of separation. It doesn't start from the villa in the jungle. It doesn't start from they're there and we're here and we'll put a big billion-dollar wall and never see each other and never experience each other. And, you know, we will continue having Paris as our, you know, center, and they will continue having, you know, Cairo as their center, and there's no connection between us. No, that is not connected to reality. It is not connected to where people are at, and it's not connected to, you know, where we, if we actually continue in the process of the Jewish people having a homeland, that is not the homeland that we had in mind. We are part of the Middle East. We are not another state of the US. And if we are part of the Middle East, then we have to start realizing that we are here to stay. And if we're here to stay, we cannot suppress and oppress another people. That's wrong. And it's not our values. And it's also just not sustainable. And it will not guarantee our security and our safety. So what we offer is what we call two states, one homeland. We start with two states, two independent, viable states for two people, the right of self-determination. There are two people who live in this homeland. Number two, one homeland. The homeland is shared. We all love it. We all care about it. We all share a very strong sentiment to malasot, as we say in Hebrew, to all of it, okay? Like Jews have a very strong sentiment to Hebron. Right now, it's apartheid in Hebron, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a sentiment to it. Palestinians, of course, have a sentiment to Yafo and Ramle and Lod and Haifa and Akko and Gaza and Jerusalem. That's Palestine to them. So what do? At this point, normally you go into separation and a zero-sum game. Well, we have a different understanding. And what we're offering is something that is closer to the European Union model in a way. And again, we stay in the paradigm of two states, but we understand that we share so much more than separates us. And so things like environment, things like the economy, things like water and natural resources, things like Jerusalem. I mean, if anyone thinks right now that we can put a big wall in the Givat Tzarfatit junction, well, that just won't work anymore. We have 2 million Palestinians living today in Israel. Of course, they're Palestinians and they're Israeli citizens. We also have 750 settlers in the West Bank. Now, nothing is impossible. We all start from, you know, if we need to uproot people in order to achieve peace, maybe we will do that. But we want to expand the imagination of what this homeland can be. And within that expansion and within starting from a different starting point of sharing the land, we can actually achieve very creative solutions to the classic deadlocks that have prevented us from achieving a viable two states. So the two states, one homeland, we offer shared institutions taking care of human rights. Right now, human rights are guaranteed by the IDF, you know, which is, I won't even elaborate about what that means, right? There is no protection of human rights and safety for Palestinians. So what we need to do is to start thinking through viable, sustainable mechanisms like shared institutions, like aspiring for freedom of movement throughout the homeland, like aspiring to address the issue of refugees, of Palestinian refugees, and like understanding that everyone who lives in this homeland will be able to access and fulfill their sentiment to this space. We talk about a shared Jerusalem. And the last thing, which I think is extremely important, is that we don't replace one injustice with another. And what I mean is that we're not here to offer an agreement. We are here to offer reconciliation. Because if we don't invest now in reconciliation, and if we try to address what's happening in Gaza without thinking about a good transitional period, and without an actual end game, and without an actual sustainable end game that is relevant and acceptable by the people, we will not see reconciliation. We will see these same problems coming over and over again. And we are here to say, we know what the problems are. We have some very, very interesting practical solutions and beginning of ideas and principles and keys to solve these problems. We've been doing this work, Israelis and Palestinians, for more than 10 years now. Academics, lawyers, activists, people from all around the world supporting this work. We have some good ideas. And we know that these keys can help us create an actual viable two-state solution. And this is what we offer. And this is why we call ourselves two states, one homeland, because we break that binary of the zero-sum game and the either or, because we know that we can only live here together. That's our only future. There's so much more to say. I will give a chance for Ron Skolnik to end this meeting. I'll just say, thank you. Thank you for the more than 500 people who have joined us here. Thank you to Avi Dabush and to Ameer Fakhoury. Thank you for Chaim and to ACIP and to Adi. Thank you also to all our co-sponsors, the multiple organizations that have been able to help us build and create and get this evening.
Thank you, Mari.
And you're very welcome. And thank you to Chaim Snedler-Feller. And I also, special thanks to Chaim. And I also want to say that please join A Land for All. This is the time. Please join our newsletter. Please support us financially, even if it's $25, even if it's more than that. And we are happy to have the conversation. We need your support. We cannot do this alone. We thought we could, but I think that October 7th has made it very clear that at this point, Israelis and Palestinians need all the support we can get in order to make sure that this is the beginning of the end of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the moment. We have to seize it together. So we need your help and support. And please join our newsletter, join our WhatsApp group, and learn more about us. We're happy to do more events like this and to share more about our thoughts and to share more about what we're doing right now to achieve our vision. So I'm going to say good night and hand it over to Chaim.
Yes, I want to thank May for your abundant passion, and I want to thank Ameer and Avi for your passionate hearts and your clear minds. You give us a vision. Our task, American Jews are asking, what should we do? Get the word out. There's an option. People don't know that there's an option. I mean, I want to shout it from the trees. They don't know. The Jewish community is paralyzed, and they're looking for a message of hope. It's up to us, all of us. We have to be the messengers of hope. And I want to end with a story. I'm sorry, in a future gathering, I hope that you'll all be introduced to Ron and see his work and how he's really trying to build an organization here for us here, or build a group, a support group here in the United States. I want to end with a story. It's a story by Heschel. I tell it often. Heschel tells a story about a remote town in the mountains where all of a sudden, over time, the clocks and the watches broke down. And gradually, people stopped winding their clocks and their watches, except for one stubborn person who kept on winding his clock to the very end. That is, until years later, a watchmaker came to town to fix the watches, and the only watch that he could fix was that of the person who kept on winding. We're the ones who have to keep on winding. If we don't keep on winding, when peace comes around as a possibility, people will not even be able to recognize it any longer. We have to keep the vision alive. 20 years ago, I saw my friends stop talking about peace as a possibility. We have to revive that. It's not just a dream. It's a vision that should guide us. Thank you all for today, and we will continue into the future with more webinars and new opportunities, and look forward in January for a tour of the United States by Eretz L'Chulam. Thank you, and keep us going. Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ameer. Thank you, Avi. Shalom, Mai.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.